one of those post-Roe horror stories. In the early days after the Supreme Court decision, a 10-year-old girl from Ohio, a victim of rape, was forced to flee her home and her home state in order to be treated at an abortion clinic in Indiana. Out of respect for her privacy, her story ends here. But for the doctor who helped her, it was just the beginning. Over the past few months, Indiana's Attorney General, Todd Rokita, a staunchly anti-abortion elected Republican official, has targeted Dr. Caitlin Bernard, an Indianapolis OBGYN. He began an investigation into her, tried to subpoena her patient's medical records, and now this. Mr. Rokita is asking the state's medical board to discipline Dr. Bernard. Her actual punishment will be up to the board. The statutes cited by Rokita include a broad array of potential penalties, from a letter of reprimand to suspending or even permanently revoking Dr. Bernard's license. Joining us now, Katty Kay, U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC Studios, and Mara Gay, New York Times editorial board member. Both are MSNBC contributors. You know, we have all had this conversation pretty regularly since Dobbs was on the horizon and since Texas enacted its vigilante abortion law. I don't know that an incident more wrenching and illustrative of the pain that the Republican extremism causes young girls has come about other than this case. And to now see the doctor, the healthcare provider, punished is maybe not surprising, but extraordinary, Mara.
There's a lot of thoughts that go through your mind, both as a reporter and as a woman and a citizen. There's a level of meanness and vindictiveness that is behind that kind of policymaking, if you can even call it that. Knowing, as someone who works in politics, that decision is being made to prosecute or to go after this doctor, most likely to score political points. So using 2 lives now that we have, this young girl and now the doctor for political purposes is in and of itself disgusting. Of course, you have to think about the chilling effect that this is going to have on physicians across the country who are simply trying to do the right thing by their patients and uphold their Hippocratic oath. You also have the fear that, for this individual doctor, the target that this puts on that person's back. And then, I just think in general, the other thing that really makes me angry personally is I think this hyper focus on abortion itself as opposed to women's health in general. And so, the debate over abortion can be had in good faith on both sides. And though I am firmly pro-choice and I believe in a woman's right to choose, I have plenty of friends who are religious who feel differently. I understand that. What I have a problem with is we have a huge maternal mortality crisis in this country as well. You don't hear anything about that. Why? Because I don't believe that this movement is really about protecting lives. It's really about punishing women and about politics. And that has no place in a hospital setting. It has no place deciding what happens to a 10-year-old girl. And it has no place ruining a doctor's life for trying to do the right thing. So all the way around, it's a dark, dark moment.
Yeah, look, to Mara's point, Katty, the movement doesn't ever get into child poverty, child hunger, child nutrition, child education, child housing. It's just about a woman not having a right to make a choice about her own body and her own pregnancy. And this, while it is the obvious extension of GOP politics around this extreme version of anti-choice politics that they are completely hostage to, despite the electoral catastrophe it has brought about for them. There are real people, and this, I've spoken to the attorney for Dr. Bernard. The physician's children have been threatened. She's been threatened. There are real consequences to these extreme politics.
Yeah, and she has said that herself in an interview recently, that she feels under threat, and that not just when it comes to abortion care, but this will limit, this kind of intimidation of physicians will limit their ability to treat things like complications with miscarriages, IVF treatment, potentially complications in early pregnancy. All of that is an unintended, potentially, consequence of the Dobbs ruling, but which physicians are feeling in real time, as they have to use the kinds of procedures they might use in a surgical abortion on somebody who has a fetus that is malformed, for example, and then they're not allowed to use them. But you're right to point out those issues around children, because on many of the issues you pointed out, Nicole, America actually fares much worse than many other countries. And if you look at the statistics surrounding child pregnancy in this country, it's something like, I looked them up just before we came on air, 1 in 9 girls suffer sexual abuse in this country. 3 in 10 teenage girls will have at least one pregnancy, and pregnancy is the main reason that teen girls are dropping out of school in America. That's not true in other developed Western nations, and America is lagging behind on those fronts. And the Dobbs ruling, potentially in the treatment of doctors like Dr. Bernard, if they were not able to perform the kinds of procedures that they had to perform in this case, this awful, tragic case of this 10-year-old, we're going to see that replicated with 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds who may not have access to abortions in this country anymore and are more likely, therefore, to drop out of school as a result of that. And their lives will be irrevocably changed, and they won't have the kind of education and economic prospects they might have done. So for a whole range of reasons, this is chilling, this kind of intimidation of physicians like Dr. Bernard.